This is Claudia Engelhart, and you're watching Time to Connect.
Claudia Engelhart, thank you so much for taking the time to connect. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Coming off the road, so I'm a little worn out, but that's the nature of the beast, I'd say.
Yeah, I could tell you've been very, very busy. I really appreciate you taking this time and been looking forward to talking to you. Um, I've I've had the opportunity to meet you a couple of times, but we haven't really had a chat. So looking forward to doing that. So I definitely want to talk about your work with Bill Frisell and some of the fascinating history you've had, some of the other people you've worked with, and also maybe we can get into a little bit for the unaware or uninitiated. What does a live sound engineer do? Probably some of it is a little bit of a mystery to some people. So,
Mm.
and is that how you would characterize yourself, live sound engineer?
Yeah, live sound engineer and tour manager, because that seems to be the other half of my life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Before
yeah.
we get into that, though, I love to start with just some bio. A short potted biography. So, where are you from? What was life like as a kid? What were you like as a kid?
I grew up in Berkeley, California, in the 60s and 70s. My father's a jazz musician and builds metal percussion instruments. My mom managed his business for a long time, and then she became a musician's, manager as well. And growing up was a lot of music. My sisters are all musicians and artists, so there was constant music surrounding me growing up.
Mm.
And so that's pretty much where it all started as far as that's concerned. Our house was I like to say it was kind of like a hub in the Bay Area. When musicians would come through town, jazz musicians, different musicians would come through town, inevitably they'd end up at our house, and we'd have, there was a lot of parties and a lot of people staying over and a lot of music, and I mean, a lot of people coming through. So I was exposed to a lot at a really young age. And my parents, because thankfully, we had a really great jazz club in San Francisco called Keystone Corner. Keystone allowed children, they had minors allowed there. So we would go regularly and hang out and hear music like all the time. So I was exposed to a lot of stuff, starting really young. And that was a pretty big education to
Mhm,
think,
mhm, mhm.
yeah.
So I know it's a curious question, but what would you say to the question, what were you like as a kid?
Um, well, I grew up in a really lively family, and being the youngest, I think I was more introverted probably. There was a lot going on and everybody was in music, and it was pretty overwhelming maybe.
Mhm,
But I guess I was taking it all in, as it was going on. Being a musician, I mean, because we all played, I kind of took it less seriously, say, than my sisters did. I think it was more, just part of our life. And there was because there was so much music going on in our household, I think I couldn't really keep up, and there's always that pressure of, oh, you got to be, performing, blah, blah, blah. And I never really liked performing. I wanted to just play.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
you'd have teachers that are gearing you towards doing, playing in an orchestra or whatever. And that wasn't really my goal. I just liked the sound of the instruments, so
mhm.
that was kind of where I was at. So I didn't really practice much, but I was around it all the time, you know.
Nice. And want to ask you about that Brazil connection because I know that was an important thing for you. But you mentioned the Keystone Corner. Do I have this right? Did I read someplace that you, as a kid, actually got to sit in the booth?
We used to sit in the booth because we were little and the sound booth was up, So it wasn't a very big room, so it was in the back. And Milton Jeffries, who was the sound engineer there, would always let us kids hang out up there in the booth,
Mm,
and we would just, it was so we could see, either that or we'd sit in the very, very front row, like right up against the stage.
Mhm.
Those were the two spots that we'd usually hang out. My parents would sit wherever and we, you know, but yeah, Milton would always let us go up in the booth. So maybe way deep down in the subconscious, you know, the seed was planted. I don't know.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was the guy I went to when I decided to do sound. He was the first person I called, and he gave me my first gig right away. I didn't really know anything, and he was just like, "Yeah, you got Monday nights," you know.
That's
So
great. That's great.
amazing.
And cliche question, I'm sorry, but I have to ask since you mentioned that, if you could now, from your perspective in 2023, you believe it's 2023, give yourself, what year was that you had that first job?
uh, 1982.
If you could give your 1982 self some advice before that night of your first gig, what would you say?
I don't know. I feel like I kind of did it. You know, I was
Awesome.
fearless.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't I wasn't really afraid. I knew at that moment, I knew that this was something I actually really wanted to do. And I don't know how it came to me it was like a vision that came to me. The light bulb over the head is what I always say. And it really was. It was like a moment where it was just like, this is what I want to do. And I hadn't really thought about it before that.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, it was about being fearless and just going for it. And I guess I was confident enough to just put myself out there, you know,
I mean,
and
that,
I was supported,
yeah.
you know, my family supported me. There wasn't any like, what do you think you're doing? I never went to college, you know, I didn't get that lecture if you have to go to college kind of thing. That's what I did. I went and did that. And I was surrounded by a lot of people and I was confident. I knew that's what was the right thing for me to do.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, trusting yourself has to be a really critical part of that because I mean your options, there's so many options as to how you could, so many knobs you could turn, so many things
Mhm.
you could do, and just having faith or trust in your own ears, I guess, is really critical. And I guess you sort of developed that growing up. And yeah, talk a little bit, if you will, about the Brazil connection. Did you live in Brazil for a while?
So
And
yeah, so what happened was my dad, when he was in college, he met a Brazilian person. So he was young and he made best friends with this guy from Brazil. And they said, oh, let's go, you know, come down to Brazil and stay with my family, blah, blah, blah. And he went down and instead of just staying for the summer, he spent 2 years there.
mm,
And my dad's really into music. And, you know, in the late 50s, Brazilian music was really, you know, I mean, he was right inside of all that. And he made friends with a lot of Brazilian musicians. So growing up, and we had a huge Brazilian record collection. Growing up, every chance my parents would get a little bit of money, we go, let's go to Brazil. And we go down to Brazil and stay with this family that my dad had befriended when he was in college. So they were like our second family.
mm,
And we'd go and spend summers there, or, you know, we'd go for 2 or 3 months sometimes and just be there, you know. So it was a big part of growing up. And the music was even a bigger part of growing up because that's really, we listened to, I didn't listen to American pop music. I listened to Brazilian pop music growing up
mm,
and
mhm,
jazz. You know, my exposure to American pop music came way later. Like I really didn't know anything, barely at all, you
mhm,
know, about that. It was Brazilian music, you know, from the 60s and 70s was where I grew up.
mhm.
Was
And family, friends, Flora and Ayrto, and
Yeah, so because my dad started building metal percussion instruments, um, we met Ayrto and Flora at Keystone Corner, and somebody introduced Dad to Ayrto, and this was probably 1970. And they got together. Of course, everybody became friends, and they all ended up in our house and big parties, and da da da. And they started collaborating because my dad was just like, yeah, you know, and he's a welder, and he was making bells and stuff. And Ayrto had all these ideas, and they got together and they'd stay up all night coming up with these crazy
mm,
ideas. You know, I wanted something that sounds like this, and I want it tuned like that, and let's make. And my dad would build these crazy sculptures and instruments for Ayrto, and the rest is history. I mean, you know, he's been making instruments since then for everybody. I mean, there's so many people that have his instruments, and some are more sculpture-like and more custom, and others are his like commercial line that he's been building for years. It sells, you can sell them and, you see them in drum stores and, online and stuff like that.
And your folks still alive?
Yes.
No, that's great.
Yeah. Dad still builds instruments. He
Wow.
still goes he's 88 years old. He still goes to his shop every single day and is out down there welding every day.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
it's amazing. He's kind of,
who are some of the other folks he's built instruments for?
oh man, I mean, there's so many people. I mean, you name, you name it. I could say, McCoy Tyner, Yusef Lateef, Billy Higgins. I mean, those, and those are the older guys. There's a lot of young people that he's building instruments for.
Yeah.
There's, I can't even come up with all the, if I
Yeah.
start thinking Mino Sinelu,
Yeah.
there's so many names I can't even conjure up.
Yeah.
Kenneth Nash, there's, yeah.
That's super cool.
People
And
all over the world, they seek him out. So,
and when you were a kid, you were probably hanging out with some of those people, and it
yeah,
probably was no big deal for you. I mean,
yeah.
did Chick Corea ever come over to the house?
Korea never came over. That was one of
Uh,
the few people who didn't come over, but yeah, but like McCoy did, and
Yeah.
Hermeto Pasquale and Egberto Gismonti and Les McCann, who's a really old friend of my dad's.
Uh-huh.
These people were kind of regulars in our house all the time. There were a lot of people. Now you have to Flora, obviously. Yeah, it was just a thing, and people would just show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, people knew, I guess, and our house was sort of this big open space. And my mom, my mom would cook these huge meals and we would just hang out. I mean, it was more interesting to be at home than it was to go to school, and I never really wanted to go to my friends' houses because I'd always feel like I might miss out on something at home because people would just appear, and so it was this, it was a pretty, Orrin Keep News lived, around the corner, a few blocks away. I mean, there were a lot of people in the business and around us that, it was just sort of a natural place for me to,
Yeah.
I am where I am now, I think.
And that's your life, so it was probably ordinary to you. But do you at this point of your life ever stop and look back and go, wow?
I don't think it was ordinary to me. I appreciated every minute of it. I knew, because these people, I mean, they're special people that we were surrounded by.
Yeah.
And it was constant, and there was constant music, and people would show up, and we had like 3 pianos in the house, and we had lots of instruments, and so there was always sessions and kind of house concert things going on, and people would just show up and play, and it was just, I never took it for granted.
Yeah,
It was always special. It was always a kind of a party atmosphere in a way. It was hard to focus on like school, for instance, that was a challenge.
Yeah.
But I got education in a different way,
Yeah. And you've been with Bill Frisell for, is it 33 years?
Yeah, about 33 years. Yeah.
How did that come about? How did that start?
Well, I was working a lot with salsa musicians. I was working with Willie Colon and Eddie Palmieri. I was doing a lot of Latin music and stuff. But the original knitting factory was just up the street from where I lived. I lived in the East Village, and it was just up Houston Street. And so I'd go in there, when I was home off the road, because my friends would all be playing there. I'd go in there and do sound occasionally, and they got to know me. So I got a phone call one day saying that their sound guy got sick or blah, blah, blah. Can you come in and do this week of music? I was like, yeah, sure. I was in town. And it was John Zorn and Naked City.
Mm.
And I didn't know any of those guys. I didn't know anything about their music. It was just, okay, cool. And I did the whole week at the knitting factory. And, so that's where I met Bill and Joey Barron and Wayne Horvitz and Fred Frith and Zorn. And like a week later, Zorn called me up and said, hey, we're going to Brazil for the blah, blah, blah. You want to come with us? And I was like, yeah, sure, of course,
Yeah.
And it was ironic that it was Brazil. Like, he had no idea that I spoke Portuguese and that this was sort of like a second place for me. So I was like, yeah. And from there, that's what I did for years.
Yeah.
Was work with Naked City. And through Naked City, it kind of branched out. Everybody in that band had their own bands. And so I would just do sound for all of them at different times. And so it was sort of this circle of music that suddenly I was in this whole other scene, totally different than where I was before that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then that I met Bill, and then Bill was like, "I'm going to take you out, you know, on the road with me more often." Da da da, and it just kind of turned into that, you know.
And I definitely want to ask you more about working with Bill, but I saw a list of people you've worked with, and my God, I mean, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Laurie Anderson, Lou Reed, Ron Carter, Michael Brecker, Grover Washington, Dave Holland, Sco. I mean, the list goes on. I want to ask you about a few of those, but before we get into that, has as much as Bill works now, that's got to be almost the only thing you do.
Yeah.
It just you're almost exclusively working with Bill now, right?
Yeah, right now I do, just because I'm too tired to do anything else.
I mean,
People call me, you know, and I'm just like, when I have a minute of downtime, I take the downtime now. I used to like, oh yeah, to fill up every, you know, gap, but now I'm just too, and Bill works enough, so I'm not,
yes, he
you know,
does.
so I don't, yeah, so I don't have to really worry about work. So if I take a month off, for instance, that's fine, because I know that there's, you know, a year in advance what's coming up with him. I do miss sometimes though working with other artists, you
Sure.
know, it's definitely a different head. And, you know, of course, the different kind of music and different people I'm surrounded with. But I've sort of just gotten to this point right now where it's really easier for me. And of course, I love what he does and all the musicians he works with and everybody that he surrounds himself with. So it's a really good fit, you know, and we really communicate well together, and, you know,
Yeah.
that's really important too, you know.
And he has his, standard guys he works with, but he also works with a lot of different people. I mean, this new thing with Ambrose, that is such a super cool little trio.
Beautiful. It's
It's so
beautiful.
beautiful, so beautiful. Do you have any good road stories from 33 years on the road with Bill Frisell?
There's always road stories. I don't know if I could come up with one, you know.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always something. Every day
Okay.
there's a road story.
Well, let me maybe prod your memory. Are there any kind of stories where things went south for whatever reason, the venue or the PA, something where you can remember just having a really challenging night?
They're challenging nights, you know. Sonically, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess there's always going to be that, you know. I there's things that happen that I, at this point, I'm kind of just like, okay, well, I can only control so much, and if this is going to go down, is I can only do as much as I can to make it work, you know. There was one thing, like a festival that I did. It was at Winter Jazz Fest. It was an ECM. I was doing the ECM nights at Winter Jazz Fest in New York City a few years ago, and whatever PA they brought in did not jive with the house system that they tied it into, and digital board, and this digital board, it was nothing was seeing eye to eye, and it was like I couldn't get the PA to work at all. And I had, I don't know, 6 or 7 bands, just one after the other, you know. So this festival is crazy. And it was ECM night, and Manfred Eicher was going to be there, and it was pianos and blah blah blah. It was huge. And I was just like, and it was me, just pretty much by myself. I had a stage manager and me and the local house guy who didn't really have a handle on what was going on. And it was horrible. I was totally frustrated and scared, because it was like the show was starting in 5 minutes and I still didn't have a working PA. And I was just finally went down to the producer and I was just like, this is gonna have to be acoustic. I'm really sorry. I was in tears, and I don't cry very often, but I was crying. I was really upset. I was like, I can't make this work. This is not working. And in the time that happened, the sound guy somehow managed to jerry rig it to make it sort of work. So the PA was like this, like half of it was, you know, at this level and the other half was at that level. And I just panned everything so that it would sort of, you know, it was just an instinct, like, well, maybe if I just pan it this way, it'll kind of feel more balanced, just psychologically. And the craziest part was that after the show, people were coming up to me and like, wow, that sounded amazing. And Manfred came up to me and blah, blah, blah. The next day, there was a review in the New York Times, and all it talked about was how great the piano sounded in that room. And I was kind of freaked out, because I was just like, and I had to do it the second day. There were 2 days. I had to go back in there the next day. And I was a wreck. was after that first show, I was just like, I was a total, and when I read that review, I was just like, okay, cool, you know?
Yeah.
And if anybody knew what was really going on in the back, it was unbelievable that's what they focused on, and that's what was reviewed, was the sound of that show. And that meant so much to me, because it was by the skin of my teeth even to get through that night. It was all I could do to just kind of keep my head above water that whole time. So that was definitely a bad memory and trying to
But
get through.
but yet it turned out well. So I wonder if
I
you
mean,
if you not to go too easy in terms of lessons learned, but I would think one lesson you learned there is, hey, next time things aren't going well, just just hang in there. It's probably going to be
well,
fun.
I've been doing it for so long. It's nothing. I can't control everything, and
Right.
I can only do as much as I could do. And it just by, it happened.
Yeah.
It was going to happen no matter what. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
it would have been acoustic, and people would have just had to like really focus, or it was the way I somehow managed to make it come together. But these things are like, maybe 20 years ago, I would have been in a total freak out panic. I mean,
Yeah.
I was pretty messed up, but I knew that it was like, well, it's beyond my control. So we just have to let it. And I was dealing with like great musicians. I mean, thank God that, the people I was dealing with are top professional
Yeah.
artists who could deal in most acoustic situations anyway,
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
wasn't really, as I had a little like when I went to the producer and I told her, I was like, listen, this might be acoustic, not ideal,
Mhm.
but it could have worked. We would have made it happen,
Mhm.
this is just part of what happens in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
And
always the unknown,
speaking of Manfred, I just wonder, have you done much studio work? Is it been exclusively live
Yeah,
stuff for you?
exclusively.
And have you thought about?
I did a little studio work in the early Nana Vasconcelos and Don Cherry used to always drag me into the studio.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't really like the studio.
Interesting.
For me, maybe I'd like it more now, but to me, it was just too confining, and I don't like the environment, and I don't like the repetitiveness of it. I like the instantaneous moment, in the moment kind of thing, and
Mhm.
the performance, which,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe there is a rush as far as like getting through a show when you do have challenges and making it happen. It's sort of a challenge for me. Can I make this work? Like, how long is it going to take me to get it together? Like in a festival when I don't get a sound check. Oh man, I could do that. And like, I got it up and running in 5 minutes. Cool. There's
Mhm.
that kind of thing that I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And now after this many years, I've gotten good at it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's,
Clearly.
yeah.
And I'm guessing festivals are probably pretty challenging just because of all the moving parts, and oftentimes they're outside and whatnot. Let me ask this question: What do you have any particular rooms that are your favorite rooms to work? That
So many good rooms.
yeah, any come to mind?
Well, I mean, just the other day we played at the Ace Theater in LA. That place rock. That was the first time I'd ever been in there, but what a fantastic room.
Uh
Oh my
huh.
God. Not only visually, but sonically, that place was beautiful.
Uh
I
huh.
didn't expect it. I was really expecting some cavernous, boomy,
Hmm.
horrible, old vaudeville theater. And that place was total opposite.
Hmm.
And it just, to me anyways, it felt really good. It was really, there's rooms like that you happen upon that are just like, wow, and then
Hmm.
there's new modern ones that are also great. Some new modern ones aren't so great, and some of them are, and
Hmm.
um, yeah, there's so many rooms. I can't even come up with names of places that, I love to work in, but there's that last one recently was really, that blew my mind. It was really fun.
How was the one in Houston where I saw you? How was that room?
Houston, wait,
It's huge. It's like a huge theater.
um, sorry, my brain, I'm telling you,
It's okay.
I do so many shows. I
I
know
know.
that was just the other day.
I know. Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, yeah, that was nice too, actually. That room was really good.
Yeah.
It was a little lively, but it was good. I
Uh
mean, the
huh.
band handled it, I thought, really well too. Having two drummers and two basses definitely makes things in a big, concert hall situation
I wanted to ask about that, but this interesting five ensemble Bill's got put together. In fact, first time I met you was at I think it was at the Blue Note in New York when and they were doing that
Was
show.
it that band? It was that.
Yeah, yeah. What does that present any particular challenges for you having two bass players and two drummers?
Oh yeah.
And can you?
Luckily though, they're all, I mean, first of all, they're all used to playing with each other in different situations.
Mhm.
So they all know each other really well. So that's great. But yeah, I mean, that boom boom starts going and there's nothing you can do about it. Trying to get clarity, especially in the basses. I mean, Kenny Wollison and Rudy Royston play the rooms so well, no matter which room you're in,
Mm.
that it allows space to happen, you know? It could be the total opposite if you had somebody who was just bashing away and not listening. Those guys are such heavy listeners, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're such good communicators. But then with bass is bass, man, and you know, you really have to. And having Tony has his way of playing, and Thomas has his way of playing, and the two of them, which is beautiful. You really can feel the differences of them. But sonically, you're dealing with low frequency stuff and that can get kind of mushy. But sometimes, you know what? You don't have to hear every note. That's what Dave Holland always told me. He told me one time, he's like, listen, you don't have to hear every single note I play. You just have to feel it. And it really was that was like, yeah, okay. It helped me out a lot because I used to struggle with him because he'd always have really loud bands and I'd always try to get the articulation. And he's like, don't worry about that. Just make sure you can feel it.
Wow.
And
That's
that was deep because I was like, oh yeah. And I keep that in mind all the time because sometimes it's not every single note. It's just the vibe that you're going to get from it, you know?
yeah, good, good, good.
Yeah.
And you did work with Wayne,
Yeah.
rest in peace. How was that? What was that like? Any
Yeah.
stories?
Wayne and Herbie, you know, I mean, first of all, their history is so deep that they didn't talk to each other. They could just communicate, you know? Um, yeah, it was, you know, it was just the three of us on tour and I didn't want to be like the person like, you know, so what was it like? And then, you know, I wasn't going to be like, I just want to let them have their space and just play and do what they did during the day. And I didn't want to be like that person constantly asking thousands of questions. So I kind of laid back. In retrospect, I wish I could have, I should have like spent a little more time, but whatever. It was really amazing how heavy those two guys are and how uh they would just the way they just connect together and they were kind of polar opposites. Like Herbie's very present and technological and very right here all the time, you know, surface in a lot of ways. I
Mhm.
mean, and then Wayne was often like philosophical
Yeah,
stuff and
yeah.
other so the two of them on both, they were like equal on either side, so coming together was so heavy for me to be in the midst of that was so fantastic because they covered everything. It was like the whole world right there, you
Mm,
know, and
mm,
how they play together and their sound and just their attitude and how they were so welcoming to me, who they didn't even, you know, they didn't know me. I just showed up there, you know, and they totally embraced having me there too, which I thought was really
mm.
beautiful, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really, yeah, so special for me to be even in their presence, you know, like
And
that.
then you've also worked with Lou Reed.
Yeah, I did some stuff with Lou and Laurie.
That's a little different than working with Herbie and Wayne.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, that's years later. There's a whole other thing. But I was working with Laurie off and on, doing a bunch of stuff just with her projects.
Okay.
And then they wanted to do their tour, the two of them. And so they called me to do that. So that's where I got to work with Lou also.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be perfectly honest, I know nothing about Lou Reed. I never grew up listening to him. I don't know, you know, his quintessential songs. And now I do more, but I didn't
Sure.
then.
Sure.
It was just like, okay, I'm working with Lou and Laurie, and this is what it is. And that was, I got along great with Lou. And I'm thankful of that because I'm sure if you didn't get along with him, I'm sure it could have been brutal. But we had fun. I had a great time with him. He was hilarious. It was like it was always good with him.
That's great.
And he was good to me. And maybe he knew that I had no idea. And maybe that was refreshing to him. It wasn't like I was like, bowing down and I
Right.
was like, this is a gig. I know where
Sure.
he's coming from musically. I can hear it. And he'd come out in the front of the house and tell me, turn it up louder, turn it up. And be like, great, okay, cool, whatever you want. This is fun. And just to
Yeah.
me, it was fun. And Laurie is beautiful. I love Laurie. She's amazing. So
Yeah.
so
And
that was a good time.
without naming names, I doubt you would want to. Have you worked with people who are just really brutal and difficult to work with?
Yeah, I try not to now.
Yeah.
I mean, really, anybody that's gonna be like that, no,
Yeah.
no,
You
I
don't
haven't done
need to.
that. I won't do it.
Yep.
I won't work with people that I don't like. I won't work with music I don't like.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, I've been lucky in that way. I've been able to choose that, I've had a lot of luck in my life as far as how my path with the musicians I've gotten to work with deeply and tour with.
Hmm.
Maybe I do a one-off here, one-off there with somebody, but to really be close and with somebody and on the road, I will not work with somebody that's going to be difficult because
Yeah.
who has the time? I don't have the energy.
And you've been working with Bill for 33 years, and you cannot find a nicer human being in the
Yeah,
world,
yeah.
so. Well, what do you do? This is kind of maybe unexpected question. What do you do during the day when you're on the road with Bill, or in the past, some of these other folks? There's got to be a lot of downtime. How do you feel your downtime when
There's
you're
no downtime. Not when I'm on the road. There's no downtime.
really?
No, because I do everything.
Yeah. So that's
I
right. You're a manager too. So
Yes, I mean, I
what-
tour manage, so, I'm
yeah.
booking flights, I'm booking hotels, I'm booking rental cars, I drive the van, I make sure that the catering's good backstage, I set up the stage, I get the sound together, I mean, I pretty much do like three people's jobs. So there's no downtime for me when I'm on the road. When I get to my hotel room, I'm inevitably, if I have an hour before I have to run to sound check, if I get lucky enough to have that much time, I'm most likely on the computer answering questions for the upcoming gigs.
Mhm.
I try to do as much of that work as I can here from home before I hit the road, so maybe I do get 20 minutes to just close my eyes.
Mhm.
But no, there's no downtime. It's go, 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 go all the time. And at the end of the day, when I'm done with my work and I go back to the hotel to sleep, a lot of times I'm so wound up that I can't sleep, and then I got to get up at whatever, 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning and do it all over again. And we don't do it easy. It's hard. It's every day.
Mhm.
We do one-offs. I mean, Bill will work every single day.
Yeah.
Luckily, he's getting older, so now he can't so much. And so we're trying to build in, travel days or, maybe a day off once in a while. Those are rare. But it's just because we're all getting old and tired, man. It's hard
Sure.
work, you
But
know.
but on those gigs where he does 5 nights at the Vanguard, for example.
I don't do the Vanguard because they don't need me because it's they play the room
Yeah.
acoustic. So I'm never there. Maybe I'll go for the first night and make sure the balance is cool, but I don't
Uh-huh.
really work in there.
Yeah.
Like the Blue Note, like if we do a week at the Blue Note, yeah, I'm there every day. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
commute to the city and do that.
So when you do have downtime, when you're not on the road, when maybe Bill's playing the Vanguard for a week,
I'm home.
what do you do? What?
I work in my garden.
Mhm.
I have a pottery studio down in the basement,
Mhm.
which I still have yet to get into. I haven't been in there in almost a year because I just haven't had enough time.
Mhm.
But that's my goal.
Yeah.
It's to make pots and go in there and just that requires a certain headspace, which I haven't been in lately. But I'm hoping this winter, because I have a couple months in a row off, I can get down there and just focus on clay again. Garden, cooking,
Yeah.
being at home with my husband, taking hikes and walks and just
Yeah.
doing as little of, I mean, inevitably I'm advancing gigs too.
Right.
Like, booking flights for 2 months from now
Yeah.
or hotels or something. And I'm right now, like I'm preparing already for next year. So it's never quite goes away.
So
The pandemic was fantastic.
I was going to ask you about that.
That was great.
I can see on one hand it'd be great because of everything you just described, but on the other hand, clearly you're someone who feeds on that go 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 and getting things organized and managing things, and that was gone during that time.
I loved it. It was so good. I needed it so bad. The timing
Yeah.
couldn't have been better
Yeah.
because we'd been busting our butts. It was just, we were on fire for years. And it was like, finally I could get a
Yeah.
break where I had nothing. I had nothing. I didn't have to open my computer. I didn't have to talk to anybody. It was, and it kind of messed with my head because going back to work has been a lot harder now because I kind of like being home. And I kind of like not working.
Yeah.
And I can't afford to not work, but I'm trying to figure out a way where I can keep that balance because it was so great to just be here. And yeah, I had my garden going and I set up my pottery studio and I was making really nice dinners and spending time with my husband, which, you know, these are things that I haven't been doing for 40 years, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of great.
So without being modest, what is it about you that makes you so good at your job? And I don't mean so much live sound engineer because you have great ears and you've been doing it for so long. I'm thinking more along the tour manager lines. That's hard work, and that takes a certain kind of personality. What is it about you that makes you successful at that?
Well, it wasn't my choice. If I could just do sound and only exclusive sound, that would be ideal. And that's what I did for a long time. It sort of fell into my lap because things were happening on the tours that weren't up to par the way we liked it. And since I'm in the front line there, it started to be like, well, maybe I should just start doing these things because I know how we like it. And I know, you know, our schedules and, you know, and so I just kind of took it upon myself to take over a lot of these responsibilities. Just because I'm doing it too. I want it the way I want it. You know what I mean? I want to be as comfortable as possible, you know, and I don't want to have to worry about getting stuck in middle seats or staying in some skanky hotel somewhere, or, you know, I mean, so I was just like, in a way I was looking out for myself, but I'm looking out for everybody, you know?
Yeah.
And it works out because I know exactly what everybody wants and how they like it and what they, you know, and I do the best I can to try to make it as easy as possible for them so they don't have to think about any of that stuff and they can just play music. And that's really my goal, is to facilitate for them to just relax and play music, and I'll try to take care of the rest as much as I can, you know.
Yeah. Beautiful. Claudia, thank you so much for taking this time. Can we finish with maybe some kind of rapid fire questions?
Okay.
And I always tell people, if you want to answer in a longer form, that's fine. Don't feel the pressure. Or if you don't want to answer these questions, don't answer them.
Okay.
Favorite Bill Frisell record?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't really listen to his records. Sorry, Bill. I don't.
Well, you don't have to. You get to hear him live all the time.
Because I'm hearing it all the time. Sometimes it's hard for me to hear the records because they don't sound the way I hear them. So
that was one of my questions for you. As someone who mixes and manages sound as a living, is it tough for you to listen to records? Do you listen to them so critically that you say, "Oh man, no"?
No, not at all.
Do you listen to music much other than?
Yeah.
And what do you listen to? What are you listening to right now?
I listen to a lot of older music. I like music from the 70s. I listen to all sorts of stuff. I mean, it can be anywhere from, you know, listening to Stevie Wonder or the Beatles to listening to old Brazilian music or to listening to jazz or to listening to country music. My palette has opened up considerably since I've gotten older, and my husband exposed me to a lot of different music, and so is Bill for that matter. So I'm much more open-eared to all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
I can't specifically say I'm only listening to blah 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 right now. I'm not. I don't really do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's a tough question, but just what comes to mind, if you could only listen to one record for the next month, that's it. Only one record.
Native Dancer, Wayne Shorter.
Okay. Good
That's
answer.
always at the top of my list.
Good answer. What triggers you? What pisses you off?
Like what?
Oh, I'm just you. I mean,
I get
it's
pissed off all the time. I'm always pissed off.
no, you're not. Are you
Yeah,
really?
I am. I get pissed off. I hate being patronized.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so if we're talking in work world, yeah, don't patronize me. Don't tell me how to do my job.
Uh-huh.
It still happens. I still have these guys that come and they have to teach me how to do sound or whatever.
Ah.
I
Is
don't
there-
even get pissed off at that anymore, actually. I just sort of look at it and be like, okay, just
Is
bear
it a
with
gender thing?
it. Can be, yes, definitely. I not always, but yes. They see me show up if they don't know, about me. But it's a respect thing also, I think. And it's just whatever.
Yeah.
I don't play into it as much as I used to, but it still happens. And sometimes these guys, like, they have to school me. That pisses me off.
Mhm.
Because it's like, really? Do I have to go through that again?
Yeah.
Doing this, I've been being schooled for, 40 years. So just enough of that already, I'm older than most of these guys that I show up now at venues too. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you have any kind of philosophical or spiritual practices that kind of help you when things are
No,
rough? No.
really, I just kind of just try to just stay cool and try to just I think I'm pretty I mean, I don't know. I'm ready to fight for what we need. I'm not gonna sit back and just let stuff happen. But I don't, I don't need any more conflict in my life,
Sure.
There's plenty. It's hard enough just dealing on a daily basis with what we have to deal with in the world,
Yeah. Maybe your gardening is sort of a meditation for you.
It is very much
Yeah. Good.
hard on the back, but it's but it's really good for the head.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. A few more questions, if you don't mind. Wow, maybe I asked you all these questions. What am I missing here? I know I've got more questions for you. Okay. Young wannabe sound engineer. Advice for them.
Yeah, trust your instincts and don't be afraid, like really just go for it. I think that second guessing yourself is the worst thing. I used to second guess myself a lot. And I'd always end up regretting it afterwards. If somebody was like, oh, you should be doing it this way. And then I'd start to second guess myself. Or maybe I should, at the end of the day, I'd be like, oh God, why didn't I just trust my instincts?
Yeah.
You're much better off that way. And, you learn, everything's just a learn. I'm still learning stuff,
Yeah.
and every day I learn something new. And so you just got to be open-minded and also be nice, you got to be like, thankful of what you're doing. And hopefully you got to love what you're doing. If you don't love it and it's not working for you, then find some other place to do something else, because it's a labor of love, at least being on the road and doing what I do. It's kind of thankless in a lot of levels. You can't be expecting people to come, oh, you're so great. It's not like that. If you usually hear the worst, you always hear, oh, it should have, you should have done this, or how come it didn't sound like that? That's just, people do that. They can't help themselves. So you can't be expecting that. You got to do it because you love it, and because you love the people that you're working with. That's even more important, I think,
Yeah, that's great. And Bill must be like family at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've known him longer than I've known my husband. I mean, I've known him more than half my life.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you read the book, the biography?
No.
Yeah.
I will eventually, that book. Yeah, I feel like that book is probably part of my history too. So
Yes.
I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I will.
And the is it Emma Franz,
Yeah, the film.
the film, did you see that?
Yeah, I saw the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Claudia, thank you so much for doing
Yeah,
this.
you're
It's
welcome.
been a pleasure chatting with you, and I appreciate it very much. And I know I'm going to see you down the road, because I will see Bill Frisell every possible chance I have. He's my favorite, and
So good.
always like to see you too. So thank you so much for doing this, and
So much.
I wish you all the best.
Thanks. And you too. Yeah, see you soon.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.